If you've been following along on the channel, you would know that the last two videos have been about giving grades to the teams that drafted in the lottery of the last two most recent drafts, and for today's video, we're going to continue to chug along on this topic. This time though, we're moving on to the draft of 2017, which was one of the most talented groupings in recent years, but there were also a few glaring whiffs, so I'm excited to get into the grades. As always, you have to keep in mind that I'm grading the pick the team made at the spot they were in, not specifically the player and how good they've been, which is a key distinction. Before we start though, I wanted to thank the sponsor of today's video, Squarespace. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the perfect all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. Now with that being said, let's begin. Starting with the number one pick in this draft, the Philadelphia 76ers began the night with one of the most unfortunate picks in recent NBA history by taking Markelle Fultz. The player Markelle was in college was someone who was destined for stardom, and his ability to blow by defenders and finish strong at the rim, pull up and shoot from anywhere on the floor, and create for others at a high level was supposed to make him a can't-miss prospect that would have given the Sixers a player with the exact skill set that they were missing at the time. But then a mysterious shoulder injury occurred, and to this day, he still hasn't fully recovered. His tenure in Philly was short-lived, he barely made any impact, and the return value they got for him was minuscule. In a draft with so much talent as this one had, taking Fultz number one was just bad no matter how you spin it, so I have no other choice than to start things off by giving this a grade of an F. Up next with the second pick, the Los Angeles Lakers drafted Lonzo Ball and completed LeVar Ball's destiny. The hype around Lonzo at the time of the draft obviously has proven to outweigh the actual player that he is, but while many are quick to slander him and ridicule him, I do think he's been a very solid player through 3 years. Most people point to his pedestrian shooting splits and lack of scoring, but overall he's been a very good player, especially as a playmaker and a defender. Plus, when you take into account that the Lakers would go on to include Ball in a package for superstar Anthony Davis, that helps boost this grade even more because of the value he provided them. He makes smart plays, he sees the floor as well as any top-tier playmaker, and this year his jumper has shown improvement both in form and efficiency. He may not be a home run of a pick as an all-star like a few others in this video will be, but he has been solid, and for that, the pick receives a grade of a B. Next up with the third pick in the draft, the Boston Celtics drafted Jayson Tatum, which was the first of the aforementioned home runs in this draft. Tatum started his career off with some blazing hot shooting that then translated to a surprisingly good playoff run when Kyrie Irving got injured, and from there, he's steadily improved in each of the next 2 seasons. Now in year 3, Tatum's beginning to take the leap from promising prospect to legit stardom, and in the last month or so before the season was put on hold, he was playing the best basketball of his entire career. His ability to score both inside and out, off the dribble, and knock down tough shots has all come into fruition in this time, and after making his first All-Star game this season, it doesn't look like that trend will be ending anytime soon. He has the ability to be one of the best scorers in the league when he hits his prime, and because of this, the Celtics get the first A+ grade of the video. Next up with the fourth pick in the draft, the Phoenix Suns drafted Josh Jackson. Jackson was supposed to be the lockdown defender of the draft class while also providing a very well-rounded offensive game, but that's not exactly how things have gone down. His play has been, to put it nicely, been inconsistent, his defense hasn't lived up to the hype, and his jumper has been a mess. His per-game numbers don't necessarily look that bad, but translating that individual production to helping the team plus watching him play with the eye test makes you realize how hollow and empty those numbers actually are. Then you add in all of his off-the-court issues that have seen him get suspended and sent down to the G League on several occasions, and he's closer to being a bust than he is to being a regular contributor. It hasn't been a complete failure, but it damn sure hasn't been very good either, so for the grade, this pick gets a D. Up next with the fifth pick, the Sacramento Kings drafted De'Aaron Fox, and by doing so, landed themselves a franchise point guard. The Kings haven't exactly had the best reputation when it comes to drafting players, but with a top 5 pick in this year, they certainly landed themselves a gem. Fox has taken huge strides each year he's been in the league, and is already putting up fringe all-star production by averaging about 20 points and 7 assists per game this year. His blazing speed and agility rank among the fastest in the entire league, and he uses this to blow by defenders and get to the basket with ease. His perimeter jumper still needs some fine-tuning, but all in all, he's destined to be an all-star in his prime, and for landing someone of that caliber and not messing things up for once, the Kings get a nice grade of an A. Next up, with the 6th pick in the draft, the Orlando Magic selected Jonathan Isaac. Isaac is one of the most underrated players from this draft because his game isn't flashy, he's not in a big market, and he doesn't necessarily fill the stat sheet, but what he brings to a playoff team is incredibly intangible to their success. He's missed a decent amount of time throughout his career due to injury, but when he's healthy, he's developed into one of the very best defenders in the entire NBA. As a forward, he provides elite rim protection, versatility that enables him to defend any position, and length to disrupt the offense. This is exactly what people believed he could be before the draft at the time, and even though his offensive game isn't quite polished, the work he does on defense makes this grade for the pick come in at a very strong A-. Up next, with the 7th pick in the draft, the Chicago Bulls drafted Lauri Markkanen. Lauri's an interesting player through 3 years because at times he's looked like a future star because of this combination of size, shooting ability, and offensive versatility. But for the most part, he's been inconsistent and honestly sometimes frustrating. Last year, he looked like he was on the cusp of breaking out when he put up about 19 points per game, but then this year he's regressed a ton, both in scoring production and efficiency, and defensively, he's always struggled. He's a good player for sure, but he may not be the great player many people thought he had the potential to be, so for that, the pick gets a grade of a B. Next up, with the 8th pick in the draft, the New York Knicks took a risk by selecting Frank Ntilikina. Every year, there seems to be 1 or 2 international prospects with barely any tape available on their game, so teams draft them based purely on potential and hope, and that's exactly what the Knicks did here. Frank has been a pretty good defender in his 3 seasons in New York so far, but his offensive game is well behind schedule, and his role on the team has fluctuated so much over time, showing that the team are slowly losing confidence in him. He's not a complete bust by any means, but he also hasn't really shown much improvement either, so the grade for this pick comes in at a subpar C-. Next up, with the 9th pick in the draft, the Dallas Mavericks selected Dennis Smith Jr. This pick has proven to be amazing for Dallas over time, but not in the normal way like the others. Smith had a pretty decent first year and a half with the team, and because of that, they intrigued the Knicks enough to trade for him, and in said trade, the team were able to acquire rising star Kristaps Porzingis. That trade has proven to be a massive win for the Mavs, and now with Porzingis paired with Luka Doncic, they have 2 legit pillars to build around. Meanwhile, Smith Jr. really fell off this season in New York and is now likely going into a major prove-yourself season next year if he wants a role on a team moving forward as he approaches the end of his contract. But the grade for these picks isn't based solely on the players, you have to remember, and because the Mavericks were able to flip him for Kristaps Porzingis, they get a pretty good grade of a B+. Next up, with the 10th pick in the draft, the Portland Trail Blazers drafted Zach Collins. Collins is definitely the one player in the lottery of this draft that gets virtually no attention, but through 3 years, he's been a nice, balanced big man that plays well on both ends of the floor and does his job. He doesn't put up big numbers, and a lot of his impact comes down to the little things, but you need guys like that on teams that want to win, and Collins can play good defense, stretch the floor, and finish inside, and alongside Lillard and McCollum creating plays for those around them, he fits in well. This pick gets a decent grade of a B-, being good, not great. Now, before we get into the last few picks, I wanted to once again thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. If you don't know who Squarespace are, they're the perfect place for you to solve all of your website building needs. If you're like me and don't know anything about coding or web design, then Squarespace is perfect for you because they provide template designs for any and all kinds of content, including pages, galleries, blogs, commerce, calendars, and more. Some of my other favorite features of the service include the email campaigns that they offer in order to help bring more traffic to your site, as well as the fully integrated commenting system that supports threaded comments, likes, and replies in order to interact with and hear feedback from your community. If you're in the market for building a website, make sure to head over to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/hoopsreference to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. The link will be down in the description of this video, and now with that being said, let's get back into the video. Next up, with the 11th pick in the draft, the Charlotte Hornets drafted Malik Monk. Monk was a big-time college player at Kentucky, and in pre-draft scouting reports was commonly labeled the best shooter in the draft. Through 3 years, however, that couldn't possibly be further from the truth, as his three-point shot has varied from below average to downright terrible at times, and this year he's shooting a career-low 28% from three. As a shooting guard, he's fairly undersized both height and weight-wise, and he lacks the playmaking ability to move down to the point guard position. Combining all of this with the fact that he hasn't even been very good as a shooter, and you realize that his career has been pretty disappointing so far. This one gets a grade of a D, being one of the most disappointing players from the class. Next up, with the 12th pick, the Detroit Pistons drafted Luke Kennard. While Monk was hyped up as the best player by many at the time in the draft, Kennard is actually producing well enough to claim that title. Through 3 years, he's always shot around 40% from three, and his volume of attempts has gone up each year. He's a very solid scorer overall, and even provides an underrated ability to create for others as a secondary playmaker. The Pistons haven't exactly made many good moves over the last few years, and now it looks like they're fully committing to a rebuild, but Kennard's one of the best assets they have left, and getting him near the end of the lottery back in 2017 results in a grade of a pretty strong B+. Up next, with the 13th pick, the Utah Jazz found a diamond in the rough when they drafted Donovan Mitchell. Mitchell wasn't the most hyped up prospect by any means, but in pre-draft workouts and throughout the combine, he really impressed and did fly up the draft boards to even be drafted in the lottery at all. From there, the rest is history, as he immediately started to produce at a high level and is now a top-tier scorer. He made his first All-Star game this year, with many more nominations likely on the way. He's putting up 24 points per game, and he's the go-to guy for a strong playoff team. Landing a guy like this at the end of the lottery easily garners a grade of an A+, because you couldn't possibly hope for a better result in this spot. And finally, the last pick of the 2017 lottery was made by the Miami Heat, and they drafted Bam Adebayo. Adebayo was more of a development project 3 years ago, but this season, he blossomed into literally one of the most ideal big men an NBA team could have in today's game. He's truly one of the most impactful players at the position now, because on defense, his name is firmly in the running for the Defensive Player of the Year award. He has quick feet, amazing instincts, and he holds it down in the middle. But his impact definitely doesn't stop there, because offensively, he's very good in pick and rolls, he has a good post game, and he's one of the best passing big men in the NBA as well, as he averages about 5 assists per game. To land someone like this at pick number 14 is unbelievable, and throughout this series I've been doing, I believe this is the first time there are back-to-back A+, because this pick also gets the highest grade possible. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below your grades for these picks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.